The drug company Power couple killing. On December 15, 2017, Barry and Honey Sherman, billionaire owners of a generic drug company called Apotex, were found dead in their Toronto mansion, hanging by belts from their indoor pool railing. Police first said it was a murder-suicide, but the facts tell a different story. The Shermans have been in a legal fight with major drug companies and were getting ready to tell the truth in court about how the drug industry was fixing prices illegally. This could have shown corruption worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Barry Sherman had built Apotex into one of the world's largest generic drug makers by always charging much less than brand-name drug prices, sometimes 80% to 90% less. His business plan threatened the whole profit system of big drug companies, and he had been getting death threats for over 10 years from competitors who blamed him for destroying their business. 3 weeks before his death, Sherman had given proof to Canadian health officials about a huge price-fixing conspiracy involving major drug companies. His testimony explained in detail how brand-name companies work together with insurance companies and government agencies to artificially make drug prices higher while stopping generic alternatives. The crime scene went against the murder-suicide story. Both victims were found with their wrists tied behind their backs, positioned in identical hanging postures that forensic experts said were impossible to do through suicide. There are no signs of a fight, no suicide notes, and no history of mental health problems or marriage troubles. Private investigators hired by the Sherman family found out that both victims had been tortured before death. Autopsy reports, first sealed by authorities, showed neck compression patterns that didn't match hanging, along with evidence of restraint marks and defensive wounds that police had failed to write down. Most damning was the timing. Sherman was scheduled to appear before a parliamentary committee investigating drug pricing within 48 hours of his death. His prepared testimony recovered from his office computer contained evidence that would have blamed executives from Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Novartis in criminal conspiracy charges. The investigation was transferred from homicide to financial crimes units within days, and key evidence mysteriously disappeared from police custody. Surveillance footage from neighboring properties was taken away, but never returned, and potential witnesses were warned against speaking to media outlets. Industry experts estimate that Sherman's testimony could have resulted in drug companies paying over $50 billion in penalties and criminal fines. His death conveniently got rid of the main witness in what could have been the largest corporate crime prosecution in Canadian history. The Epstein elimination. Jeffrey Epstein's death on August 10, 2019, in his Manhattan jail cell was officially ruled suicide. But the circumstances surrounding his death reveal a coordinated elimination designed to protect the world's most powerful people from being exposed in the largest blackmail operation in modern history. Epstein had spent decades running a complicated honeypot scheme, secretly recording world leaders, business titans, and celebrities in compromising situations with underage victims. His private island, nicknamed Pedophile Island by locals, contained hidden cameras in every room and advanced recording equipment that captured years of criminal activity by the global elite. The financier's black book contained contact information for presidents, prime ministers, tech moguls, Hollywood executives, and members of royal families. Phone records released through court proceedings revealed regular communication with Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, and dozens of other powerful figures who visited his properties. 2 weeks before his death, Epstein had begun cooperating with federal prosecutors, providing evidence about his clients' activities in exchange for protective custody. His lawyers reported that he was optimistic about his legal prospects and was actively preparing his defense with information that would bring down half of Washington and Wall Street. The night of his death, every security protocol at the Metropolitan Correctional Center was mysteriously violated. Surveillance cameras malfunctioned. Guards fell asleep simultaneously. His cellmate was transferred hours earlier, and the suicide watch that had been in place was inexplicably lifted against standard procedures. Autopsy findings revealed injuries more consistent with homicidal strangulation than suicide by hanging. Multiple neck fractures, particularly the hyoid bone break, typically occur in cases of manual strangulation rather than hanging deaths. The position of ligature marks and blood spatter patterns contradicted the official suicide narrative. Within hours of Epstein's death, FBI agents raided his private island in Manhattan Mansion, seizing computers, hard drives, and thousands of photographs that allegedly contained evidence of criminal activity by prominent individuals. This evidence has never been released, and multiple requests through Freedom of Information Act have been denied for national security reasons. The elimination of Epstein conveniently ended investigations that could have exposed criminal networks spanning governments, corporations, and intelligence agencies worldwide. His death protected individuals whose exposure would have fundamentally altered global power structures and potentially triggered the collapse of entire political establishments. The McAfee Manifesto murder. John McAfee, the eccentric founder of McAfee antivirus software and cryptocurrency pioneer, was found dead in his Spanish prison cell on June 23, 2021, just hours after a court approved his extradition to the United States. His death came as he was preparing to release what he called his dead man's switch, a massive data dump containing evidence of government surveillance programs and cryptocurrency manipulation schemes. McAfee had become increasingly paranoid about government surveillance after discovering that his antivirus software was being used by intelligence agencies to spy on users worldwide. He publicly accused the CIA and NSA of using commercial software companies as fronts for mass surveillance operations that violated constitutional protections. In the months before his death, McAfee had been developing a secure communication platform designed to get around government monitoring. His blockchain-based system would have allowed completely anonymous transactions and communications, potentially undermining centralized financial control systems that governments use to track and control populations. The cryptocurrency mogul had also uncovered evidence of massive market manipulation by central banks and government agencies working to suppress alternative currencies. His research revealed coordinated efforts to crash cryptocurrency markets, while governments secretly accumulated digital assets for their own strategic reserves. McAfee's dead man's switch was designed to automatically release terabytes of classified documents if he failed to check in every 24 hours. The system contained evidence of government corruption, corporate surveillance partnerships, and financial manipulation schemes that would have exposed the hidden mechanisms controlling global monetary systems. Prison officials reported that McAfee was found hanging in his cell using torn bed sheets, but fellow inmates reported hearing sounds of struggle and multiple voices in his cell area hours before his body was discovered. Surveillance footage from the prison corridor was reported as corrupted and could not be recovered for investigation. The most suspicious aspect of McAfee's death was the immediate shutdown of his dead man switch system. Within minutes of his death being reported, all of his secure servers went offline simultaneously, suggesting coordinated action by parties with advanced technical capabilities and prior knowledge of the triggering event. Spanish authorities rushed the cremation process, completing it within 48 hours before family members could arrive to claim the body or request independent autopsy. This prevented verification of suicide claims and eliminated physical evidence that might have contradicted the official narrative. McAfee had repeatedly stated in interviews that he would never commit suicide and that any reports of self-inflicted death should be considered evidence of assassination. His final social media posts contained cryptic references to insurance files and warnings about powerful enemies who wanted him silenced. The pharmaceutical whistleblower termination. Dr. Brandy Vaughn, former pharmaceutical executive turned vaccine safety advocate, was found dead in her California home on December 8, 2020, after exposing how pharmaceutical companies manipulate safety data and suppress evidence of vaccine injuries. Her death came just weeks before she was scheduled to testify in a major lawsuit against her former employer, Merck. Vaughn had worked as a sales representative for Merck, where she discovered internal documents showing that the company knew about serious side effects for vaccines, but deliberately concealed this information from regulators and the public. Her inside knowledge made her one of the most credible critics of pharmaceutical safety practices. The former executive had founded Learn the Risk, an organization dedicated to exposing pharmaceutical corruption and had amassed a following of over 400,000 people on social media platforms. Her presentations detailed how drug companies use fraudulent clinical trials, ghostwritten research papers, and regulatory capture to push unsafe products to market. Most damaging to the industry were Vaughn's revelations about the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, which she claimed captured less than 1% of actual vaccine injuries. Her analysis of internal pharmaceutical documents suggested that serious adverse events were 50 to 100 times more common than public health agencies acknowledged. In the months before her death, Vaughn reported escalating harassment, including break-ins to her home where nothing was stolen but items were mysteriously moved, anonymous death threats, and surveillance vehicles parked outside her residence for hours at a time. She documented these incidents on social media as potential evidence if anything happened to her. Vaughn had specifically stated in multiple public forums that she was in excellent health, had no intention of harming herself, and that any sudden death should be investigated as potential homicide. She had even recorded videos to be released posthumously if she died under suspicious circumstances. The coroner's report listed natural causes as the cause of death, citing a rare cardiac episode, despite Vaughn being only 47 years old with no history of heart problems. Family members were denied requests for independent autopsy, and toxicology results that might have revealed poisoning were classified as inconclusive. Within days of her death, Learn the Risk website was shut down, her social media accounts were suspended, and her research archives were removed from internet servers. The systematic elimination of her work suggested coordinated action by parties with significant technical resources and influence over major technology platforms. The banking insider assassination. John Wheeler III, former Pentagon official and Wall Street consultant, was found dead in a Delaware landfill on December 31, 2010, after threatening to expose a massive money laundering operation involving major banks and defense contractors. Wheeler had discovered evidence that billions in taxpayer funds were being funneled through offshore accounts to finance illegal weapons deals and covert operations. Wheeler had spent his career in high-level government positions, including service as a special assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force and consultant to major defense contractors. His security clearances and insider knowledge made him privy to financial arrangements that most government officials never see. The investigation that would cost Wheeler his life began when he noticed irregularities in Pentagon contracting procedures. His analysis revealed that defense contractors were systematically overcharging the government while funneling excess profits through shell companies to offshore accounts controlled by intelligence agencies. Most explosive was Wheeler's discovery that major banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, were facilitating these transactions by providing false documentation and failing to report suspicious activities as required by federal law. The scheme involved over $2 billion in misappropriated funds annually. Wheeler had compiled extensive documentation of the money laundering network, including bank records, contract documents, and email communications between executives coordinating the illegal activities. He was preparing to present this evidence to congressional investigators and federal prosecutors. In the days before his death, Wheeler exhibited signs of extreme paranoia, telling friends he was being followed and that his communications were being monitored. He was last seen on surveillance footage appearing confused and disoriented, behavior that family members insisted was completely out of character. The circumstances of Wheeler's death defied explanation. His body was discovered in a landfill, but there was no evidence of how he had traveled there or who had transported him. Autopsy results showed injuries consistent with assault, but police claimed they could find no evidence of foul play. Within weeks of Wheeler's death, the congressional investigation he was supporting was quietly terminated, and the federal prosecutors he was working with were reassigned to different cases. His research files were confiscated by federal agents and classified under national security orders that remain in effect today. The tech surveillance exposer, Aaron Swartz, internet activist and programming prodigy, was found dead in his Brooklyn apartment on January 11, 2013, just weeks before he was set to reveal how major technology companies were secretly collaborating with government agencies to conduct mass surveillance on American citizens. His research had uncovered the foundations of what would later be partially revealed through Edward Snowden's NSA leaks. Schwartz had used his position as a fellow at Harvard's Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics to investigate partnerships between tech companies and intelligence agencies. His work revealed that companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple were providing unprecedented access to user data without proper legal oversight or public disclosure. The young programmer had discovered that the government's surveillance capabilities far exceeded what Congress or the public understood. His analysis showed that intelligence agencies could access virtually any digital communication, financial transaction, or online activity in real time through secret agreements with technology corporations. Most damaging was Schwartz's evidence that major tech companies were not just complying with government surveillance requests, but were actively designing their platforms to facilitate data collection and analysis by intelligence agencies. This represented a fundamental betrayal of user trust and constitutional privacy protections. Schwartz was preparing to release millions of academic papers and government documents through his guerrilla open access project, which would have included classified materials exposing the full scope of digital surveillance programs. His goal was to make information freely available that revealed how technology was being weaponized against democratic freedoms. Federal prosecutors had charged Schwartz with multiple felonies carrying potential sentences of decades in prison for accessing academic databases to release research papers. However, colleagues believed the harsh prosecution was designed to pressure him into abandoning his surveillance research rather than seeking justice for data theft. The timing of Schwartz's death was particularly suspicious, occurring just days after he had announced plans to reveal the biggest story in Internet history at an upcoming technology conference. His prepared presentation materials were seized by federal agents and have never been released to his family or legal representatives. Schwartz had repeatedly told friends and colleagues that he had no intention of harming himself and was optimistic about fighting the charges against him. His family insisted that the federal prosecution had driven him to despair, but many observers noted that his death conveniently eliminated a major threat to government surveillance programs. The energy cartel liquidation. Gary Kildall, pioneering computer programmer and potential alternative energy developer, died under mysterious circumstances on July 11, 1994, after developing software that could have revolutionized energy distribution systems and threatened the monopoly power of major oil and electricity companies. Kildall had created one of the first personal computer operating systems, but his later work focused on developing smart grid technologies that could enable peer-to-peer energy trading and eliminate the need for centralized power companies. His innovations threatened to decentralize energy markets in ways that would have devastated utility company profits. The programmer's energy management software could coordinate renewable energy production, storage, and distribution across networks of individual households and businesses. This technology would have allowed communities to become energy independent while dramatically reducing costs and environmental impact. Kildall's system posed an existential threat to energy cartels because it would have eliminated the artificial scarcity that maintains high energy prices. By enabling efficient distribution of locally produced renewable energy, his technology could have made traditional power plants and utility companies obsolete within a decade. Major energy corporations had attempted to purchase Kildall's patents and research, but he refused all offers, believing that energy independence was a fundamental right that shouldn't be controlled by profit-seeking corporations. He planned to release his software as open source, making it freely available worldwide. Official reports claimed Kildall died from head injuries sustained in a fall at a California bar, but witnesses disputed this account. Several people present that evening reported seeing men in suits who seemed to be following Kildall and who left immediately after his injury occurred. The medical examiner's report contained inconsistencies that suggested the head trauma was not consistent with a simple fall. Injury patterns indicated multiple impacts and possible assault, But police investigators closed the case without pursuing these discrepancies or interviewing potential suspects. Within days of Kildall's death, his research laboratory was burglarized, and all computers containing his energy software were stolen. The sophisticated nature of the break-in suggested professional operatives with advanced technical knowledge rather than common thieves seeking valuable equipment. The media monopoly termination. Michael Hastings, investigative journalist and author, died in a fiery car crash on June 18, 2013, just hours after informing colleagues that he was about to publish explosive evidence about media manipulation by intelligence agencies and their control over news narratives. His research threatened to expose how government agencies secretly influence public opinion through coordinated media campaigns. Hastings had been investigating Operation Mockingbird, a CIA program that placed intelligence assets in major news organizations to shape public opinion and suppress inconvenient stories. His work revealed that these operations had expanded dramatically in the digital age, with intelligence agencies now capable of manipulating online discussions and social media trends in real time. The journalist's research showed that major news outlets regularly receive guidance from intelligence agencies about which stories to emphasize, how to frame particular issues, and which investigations to avoid entirely. This coordination between government and media represented a systematic manipulation of democratic discourse. Most explosive was Hastings' evidence that intelligence agencies were using artificial intelligence and bot networks to create false grassroots movements and manipulate public opinion on social media platforms. These operations could make fringe viewpoints appear mainstream while marginalizing legitimate dissent. On the day of his death, Hastings had sent emails to colleagues stating that he was going into hiding because he was being investigated by federal agents and feared for his safety. He specifically mentioned that his latest story would blow the lid off government media manipulation and that powerful forces were trying to stop its publication. Hastings' car crashed into a tree at high speed in the early morning hours, causing an explosion so intense that it took firefighters over an hour to extinguish the flames. The force of the explosion was inconsistent with a normal gasoline fire, leading some investigators to suspect that accelerants or explosives had been involved. Witnesses reported that Hastings' car appeared to accelerate suddenly before the crash, despite no evidence of mechanical problems or driver impairment. Modern cars contain computer systems that can be remotely accessed, and security experts have demonstrated that vehicles can be controlled through wireless hacking techniques. The story Hastings was working on was never published, and his research files were seized by federal agents who claimed they were investigating potential national security breaches. His editor at Rolling Stone confirmed that the article would have revealed systematic government manipulation of news media that went far beyond anything previously reported. The financial fraud fighter elimination. Karen Silkwood, chemical technician turned corporate whistleblower, died in a suspicious car crash on November 13, 1974, while driving to meet with a reporter about plutonium contamination cover-ups that implicated government agencies and major corporations in criminal negligence that threatened public health on a massive scale. Silkwood had been working at the Kerr-McGee plutonium plant in Oklahoma when she discovered that the company was cutting safety corners to increase profits while exposing workers and nearby communities to dangerous radiation levels. Her documentation revealed that contamination was far worse than regulators knew and that cleanup efforts were deliberately inadequate. The technicians' investigation uncovered evidence that Kerr-McGee was illegally dumping radioactive waste, falsifying safety records, and bribing government inspectors to overlook violations. Most damaging was her proof that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission knew about these problems but chose to protect industry profits rather than public safety. Silkwood had documented systematic safety violations that put thousands of people at risk of cancer and other radiation-related illnesses. Her evidence showed that companies and government agencies were willing to sacrifice public health to maintain profitable nuclear energy programs and weapons production. On the night of her death, Silkwood was carrying documents that would have proven criminal negligence by both corporate executives and government officials. These papers included internal memos acknowledging contamination risks, safety reports that have been falsified for regulatory submission, and evidence of payoffs to government inspectors. Her car was found crashed into a concrete culvert, but investigators discovered evidence that suggested she had been forced off the road by another vehicle. Paint scratches on her car were consistent with contact from a larger vehicle, and tire marks at the scene indicated that another car had been present during the incident. The documents Silkwood was carrying to the meeting were never found, despite extensive searches of the crash site and surrounding area. These papers contained the most damaging evidence against Kerr-McGee and could have resulted in criminal charges against company executives and government officials. The vaccine truth-teller termination. Dr. Jeff Bradstreet, autism researcher and vaccine safety advocate, was found dead in a North Carolina river on June 19, 2015, with a gunshot wound to the chest, just days after his clinic was raided by federal agents seeking to suppress his research linking vaccines to autism and other neurological disorders. Bradstreet had treated thousands of autistic children using protocols that detoxified heavy metals and other toxins that he believed were introduced through vaccination programs. His success rates in improving autism symptoms were far higher than conventional treatments, threatening the narrative that autism is purely genetic and untreatable. The researcher had published peer-reviewed studies showing correlations between vaccine ingredients like mercury and aluminum and neurological damage in children. His work suggested that autism rates could be dramatically reduced by eliminating toxic additives from childhood vaccines and treating existing cases with detoxification therapies. Most controversial was Bradstreet's research into nagalase, an enzyme that he claimed was deliberately added to vaccines to suppress immune function and increase susceptibility to cancer and autoimmune diseases. His theory suggested that vaccine programs were being used to deliberately weaken population health for profit and control. Federal agents raided Bradstreet's clinic just days before his death, confiscating patient records, research data, and treatment protocols that had helped thousands of families. The raid was conducted under authority of the Food and Drug Administration, which claimed his treatments were unapproved medical practices. Bradstreet's family insisted that he had no history of depression or suicidal ideation and was optimistic about defending his research against government prosecution. They hired private investigators who found evidence suggesting that his death was staged to appear as suicide while actually being homicide. The gunshot wound was to the left side of his chest, despite Bradstreet being right-handed, and forensic analysis suggested the trajectory was inconsistent with self-inflicted injury. Additionally, the weapon was never found, despite extensive searches of the river and surrounding area. Within months of Bradstreet's death, several other alternative medicine practitioners who had been researching vaccine safety and treating autism were found dead under suspicious circumstances. This pattern suggested a coordinated elimination campaign targeting researchers who threatened vaccine industry profits and public health narratives. These 10 suspicious deaths reveal a disturbing pattern. When wealthy and powerful individuals threaten to expose information that could destroy established systems of control, they tend to die under mysterious circumstances that conveniently silence them forever. From pharmaceutical executives to tech pioneers to investigative journalists, anyone with the resources and knowledge to challenge entrenched power structures faces the ultimate consequence. What unites these cases isn't just the suspicious timing and circumstances of each death, but the systematic suppression of information that followed. In every instance, the explosive revelations these individuals were preparing to share disappeared along with their lives, buried in classified files, or simply destroyed to protect those who would have been exposed. The pattern suggests a coordinated system for eliminating threats to the established order. Whether through intelligence agencies, corporate security operations, or organized criminal networks, powerful forces exist that are willing and able to silence anyone who threatens to reveal the truth about corruption, manipulation, and control systems that govern our world. Perhaps most chilling is how these eliminations are disguised as suicides, accidents, or natural deaths, allowing the perpetrators to avoid investigation while sending clear warnings to others who might consider exposing similar secrets. The message is unmistakable. Challenge the system at the highest levels, and you will pay with your life. The deaths documented here represent just the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. For every billionaire or high-profile figure whose suspicious death attracts attention, countless others with dangerous knowledge likely disappear quietly, their stories never reaching public awareness. The true scope of this elimination system may be far greater than we can imagine. These cases prove that in a world where information is power, those who control the most dangerous secrets will go to any length to protect them. Money, influence, and connections offer no protection when someone threatens to expose the fundamental mechanisms of control that keep the existing power structure intact. The greatest tragedy isn't just the loss of these individual lives, but the loss of the truth they died trying to reveal. Each death represents countless secrets that could have changed the world, reforms that might have protected millions of people, and revelations that could have freed humanity from systems of manipulation and control that continue to operate in darkness. The pattern is clear. In the battle between truth and power, power consistently wins through the ultimate silencing method. Until we find ways to protect whistleblowers and truth-tellers from retaliation, the secrets that could transform our world will continue to die with those brave enough to expose them.